Hi guys, I hope you're all well. I've been really excited to show you guys this tutorial of old school sprinkle cake that we used to have in school. I remember this would be one of my most favourite desserts that I would choose every time I was lining up for my school dinners. And I know the dinner lady always gave me that little bit extra because she knew how much I loved it. But I just can't tell you how simple and easy this is, and I hope you guys enjoy making it. So now before we start, I'm going to teach you how I line my tins. So I've got an 8-inch tin here, and I've just had this lying around. You can use any size tin, but I think for the quantities that we're doing, around an 8 to 10 inch will be fine. So what I do is I've got my parchment and I've got some butter, and I've also got like a brush. So I'm just going to mix that in with some butter, and I'm literally just going to cover the whole of the bottom and all of the sides. Just make sure you do get your corners, because if you don't, then your parchment won't stick. Okay, so now I've got that done, I'm going to show you how I cut my parchment. But if you don't have parchment, what you can do is you can just pour in some plain flour, and you just got to like jig it around and kind of turn it so the flour covers all the butter. But one thing I would say with that is just make sure you take it out whilst the cake is still sort of a little bit warm, because otherwise it will stick. Whereas with parchment, you can kind of leave it in as long as you need to. So now I'll roll my parchment out, and I'll always measure how much I need with my tin. And I'll literally just cut that. And then I'm just going to cut off the excess as well. Now, because I know that that's the same size, I will reuse this, so that's not going to go to waste. So I'll put the base aside, and then I'm literally just going to cut another strip. Fold that in half. And just cut that. So now these are all the same sort of size, so I'll just cut this. I know mine doesn't look perfect, but it doesn't really matter. As long as it's all cut, it's fine. So now that that's done, what you want to do is line them all up and lay it flat. And you just want to get your scissors, and at an angle you want to snip at the very bottom. Just like that, so then they're kind of like a bit of an angle cut. So now what I'll do is, if you can see here, I'm going to get my parchment, and I'm going to lay that a little bit down flat, so then it kind of sits at the bottom. So the cut lines sit at the bottom, and then the top part sits at the top. And I'm going to do that all the way round. And again, here, like I would put butter there, so just you can just go back in and make sure it's all stuck. And again, the other side. And then just lay your final piece of parchment over the top. And literally that is it. And then when you take your cake out, you can peel each piece off individually, so that's nice and easy. So now we're ready to get our cake mix in. This part is super easy. I've got 300 grams of butter, salted or unsalted, doesn't matter. 300 grams of castor sugar, you can use granulated as well. I've got 300 grams of self-raising flour. If you've got plain flour, then just add a little bit of baking powder into it. And I've got 5 eggs that I've pre-cracked. And I've also got 95 millilitres of full-fat milk, but you can use semi-skimmed or coconut milk, whichever you prefer. So now I'm just going to start by mixing my butter. So now I'm going to do what we call creaming, and you literally just mix the butter and the sugar together, and it just makes it really like soft and fluffy, and that's when you get a really good bake. So I'm going to switch this on. And what I want is for the butter to look slightly paler and nice and soft. To get a really good cake sponge, you really do want to make sure that your butter is room temperature. So try not to take it out of the fridge too quickly or use it too quickly. So now that my butter looks slightly paler and soft, I'm going to add in my castor sugar. And again, I'm just going to carry on with the creaming. I'm just going to scrape this down so everything's all incorporated. And now that's done, I'm just going to add a little bit of egg and a little bit of flour, and I'm going to alternate until it's all combined in together. You do want to add it bit by bit, just because then you get a much smoother bake rather than adding it all in at once and then it's just a complete mess. So I'm just going to add a little bit of egg. Whisk that. At this point it will start looking split, but that will come together as soon as we start adding the flour. Now for some flour. Just make sure you don't go too high, because otherwise it will go everywhere. And now you can see it's kind of looking combined, so you know you're on the right path. So I'm just going to add a bit more egg. Some more flour. And now my final egg. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to let this whisk for a few minutes, scrape it down, make sure that all the underneath is all combined, and then I will give it another mix. So sometimes you do get a little butter stuck at the bottom, so you just want to make sure that you've got all of that sort of away and incorporated in. If you are using a handheld mixer, then and if you are using a clear bowl, just lift your bowl up to make sure that everything from underneath is sort of incorporated. So I'm just going to give that a quick whisk. And now I'm going to add my 95 millilitres of milk alongside my vanilla. So I've got about a teaspoon worth of vanilla essence in there. And literally that all looks completely combined. It looks nice and fluffy and soft. So now I'm going to put it into my tin. So now that my mix is all incorporated, I'm just going to take it off my mixer, give it a good old stir. And now I'm literally just going to pour it straight into my tin. And that is that. You might want to give it a few little taps. And I'm just going to take a palette knife, you can use the back of the spoon, and I'm just going to sort of spread that out and flatten out the top and make sure it's all nice and neat. So now that this is done, it should look a little bit like that, where it's all flat and smooth. Well, mine doesn't look too smooth, but that's fine. And I'm now going to put this into the oven. I've preheated it at 150 degrees, and I'm going to bake this for about 45 to 50 minutes. So yeah, and then once I've done that, then I'm also going to let it sit for about an hour after that before we do the final icing. I've now got my cake out of the oven. I actually left it in there for an hour because my oven at home to my oven at work is slightly different, so you guys will have to gauge that, but averagely I'd say 50 minutes to an hour. So as you can see here, it's all nice golden and brown. It's really spongy, so I'm going to let this cool down now, and in the meantime I'm going to make the pink icing. So as great as the sponge is, we all know that we love the pink icing on this cake. So that's what we're going to make now. So I have got 400 grams of icing sugar. So I'm now going to sift that into my bowl. You might want to do this bit by bit just because it will end up getting really messy. And sometimes just holding it over and maybe like squeezing it. I've just splattered it all over my clothes. So now that's done, I'm going to put it onto my mixer and add some water. Now I'm ready to add my water. I've got 8 tablespoons of water. You will have to gauge this again because obviously you don't want it too thick. But start off with about 8 tablespoons and hopefully that should kind of be some guide for you. So I'm just going to pour this in, switch it on and slowly pour that in. And I can see that it's starting to come together. I've got some bits left over at the side, so I'm just going to scrape them in. Okay, so for me, I find this far too runny, and I know that that is just going to go everywhere. So I'm going to add another 200 grams of icing sugar into this, and that should thicken it up to the perfect consistency. So I added my extra 200 grams of icing sugar, and now I have the perfect consistency. So it will be 700 grams of icing sugar to 8 tablespoons of water. So now I've got a little bit of pink. I'm using what we use to make cakes, but you guys can use like the liquid form that you get from any supermarket. It's just the colouring. You can either leave it white, because I know you used to get sprinkle school cake that was white, but we used to have it pink, so I'll be doing pink. So I'm just going to add a little bit to my mixture, and I'm going to whisk that in. And eventually now you'll start seeing it turn pink. So now that my icing's ready, I'm going to cover my bowl with some cling film. I'm going to wait for my cake to completely cool down, and then we'll take it from there. My cake's now finally cooled down, and I removed it from the tin and removed the parchment. I then put it on a wire rack so it could cool down fully. I'm just going to use my scales as my chopping board, so I'm just going to move this over here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the top off, and then I'm going to cut the sides off ever so slightly, just so you can see like more of the sponge. So I will start with the top. So you might want to get low for this because you want to try and get as level as possible. So just start gently, and then you can kind of take away more if you have to. So now I've got that level, I'm just going to trim off the edges ever so slightly, because you really just don't want to waste anything. And literally that is enough. Even if you get a little bit at the edges, it's fine. Those bits are super tasty and crispy. So I'm now going to move this onto a nicer plate, and I'm going to get the icing on. Now that I've cut all the excess off my cake, I'm now going to ice it. So all I literally do is just dollop it on. You can do this with a knife if you don't have a palette knife, that's fine. And if you guys do have any extra left over, then you can just literally stick it in a bowl, stick some cling film over it, and just set it aside for another cake. So literally all you need to do is just wiggle your palette knife, back and forth. What you don't want to do is add too much pressure and drag too much, because what you'll do, you'll pick up the crumbs underneath and you won't get a nice clean finish on top. So I'm like really gently just bringing it to the corners. And if I'm honest, I'm just letting it fall because I don't want to pull any of the cake from the bottom through. If you do, it's not a big deal because you are only going to eat it at home. And you can just add a little bit more icing to cover that up. So like there, I know I can't pull anymore, so I'll just put a little bit more on. So again, I'm just using the tip of my palette knife. You can use the tip of a normal knife or the edge of a spoon and just kind of push it into the places that you want it to go. If it drips over the edge, that's fine, it's not a big deal. I've got one side dripping because I know I've gone heavy, but again, it's fine. You can just pull it across a little bit, it might save it a little bit. And then once that's done, if you just give it a bit of a wiggle, all the icing should settle. And literally all you need to do now is just finish it with sprinkles. And lots of them. And there you have it, home old school sprinkle cake.